Okay. As I said, myself, Carol, and Johnny will be doing the presentation. I will be doing the I'll pull this up. I'm going to share our PowerPoint presentation so you can see where we're going with this. Get the sharing. Okay, can you all see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
The three of us are going to be presenting the topics that we're covering today. And I will be covering the introductions and the housekeeping, the finance survey that was taken and was out there from April 30th to May 7th. We'll do the polling questions, and I'll cover why annual reports are important and deferred revenues. Carol is going to go over fundraising, reporting, and other government reporting, and Johnny will go over the final year-end reports, and we'll all three address any questions and answers you have at the end of that. Now, as your question, as you think of a question, please put it in the chat. Carol will be reading the chat questions at the end of the presentation so we can answer those questions. And so be sure to add those in. They're going to be important as we go on. And we put the Q&A up and try to put answers that we might not, either that we gave during this session or we're not able to. So please put your questions in there. That's a real big important, or comments, experiences you've had, because those are really important to make the peer session really useful. We'll get going. This is a summary of the survey we did. And by the way, we'll put up the raw survey, and I will summarize the 5th and 6th items. So be sure to look it up when this is all put up on the website. But what you can see on this survey, we're not going to go over this in detail. We got 30 responses, and over, when you're asking what's the time consuming, what's difficult, what you're curious about, you get reporting, financial results, you get membership issues with Hub, and government filing. So those are pretty much the biggest thing. And reporting can be of just your branch activities and also fundraising spend. So this is where we are. We plan on sending out another survey after the branch officer report has been completed, which is supposed to happen at the end of this month. All the new officers are supposed to be in. And then this is supposed to then be updated. The board will be updated, and then we will, once we are sure that we've got all the new finance officers, we will then send out the survey again to all the officers in place for the new fiscal year. And so we'll leave it up about 3 weeks, and that should help give everybody a longer opportunity to respond to it, and we'll get the results again. And what this does is help us find out who is, or what are the questions that you all have and what you really want to cover in the topics. Although standard is to get those government reports in early on because they have to be done in the fall. And one of the reasons we're doing this peer group and going over reporting again in your annual reports is because those annual reports are the basis for what you fill out in the fall. So when this presentation is over, I created a survey within the presentation, which should come up once you finish, once the presentation is finished. So at the end of this period, you should see that survey question. So fill it out, and it's really a question, very simple question. You know, what other questions do you want included in topics included for the next survey? So you can put it there, but I recommend putting it in the chat as well, just in case that survey, that section, that survey part of the application doesn't work. As I said, this is the first time I've tried it. So we have these 4 polling questions. I'm going to run the polling. And so I want you to fill them out, and we'll go over what we're getting. We can see how that's working. So I'm going to stop share real quickly and run the polling. Again, if you can mute yourself, it will help us eliminate any background noise. Everybody about done with the poll?
There may be one person in the waiting room. Someone says
Seen it. Okay.
Sherry Burgess is trying to get into the meeting.
I'm going to end the poll real quickly.
So I can see question 2 and part of question 3.
Scroll down.
Does that help?
Yes.
Got it? All right. Good. Pull up the. So I think we probably ended up with the results that we would expect. One of the questions, do you record? Let me put this up here. Do you record deferred dues revenues? I think it ended up with 9 yes, 10 no, and 12 what is deferred dues revenues, which is our typical response. So we're seeing that. Which 990 form do you file? Most, I have 22 here, request national to do it. And then we have 3 that file the 990 in directly, even though national could do it. 2 file the 990 easy, and 1 files a full 990. And that's pretty expected. Are your total branch fundraiser revenues over 15,000? And 3 said yes, and 24 no. Will your branch have a new finance officer? 8 said yes, and I had about 19 said no. So we'll have a good chunk of new officers, and maybe some of them are here today. I requested that everybody receiving the reminders pass it on to an upcoming officer if they had a new one coming in. So we wanted to know this just to go over it because we do get questions about the new revenue recognition method that National is doing. So it kind of drags the state and the branches along with it. If new members are signing up at any time, can sign up anytime, and they will pay every 12 months from then. So that's when you're going to get your revenues from them. And we have a new requirement on the 990 easy if branch fundraiser revenues are over 15,000. So we'll go over that a little bit. All right. So
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yes. How do we, I'm an accountant and I've been doing these revenues on a cash basis. You recognize it when you get it, not an accrual basis when you recognize it when you earn it.
And I'm going to go over that in deferred
Thank
revenue.
you.
That's not uncommon. If you have any further questions after the presentation, be sure to put in the chat and we can go over it in the Q&A as well.
Thank you.
Welcome. So why are annual reports important and useful? Part of it is, if you go down to the bottom, they're required, so you have to do them anyway, but they really are a tool as well. So as this is presented, they provide information for making decisions about your budget for the upcoming year. You look at how you make a plan for this current year. You made a plan back at the beginning of the year, and you did a preliminary budget possibly, but definitely a final budget to indicate what activities you were going to do, what fundraisers you were going to do, what expenses you had to cover, etc. So you want this annual report to give you a solid explanation and show how you performed. Did you get any surprise expenses? Did some expenses go up when you did your fundraiser? Did it turn out as you planned it to turn out? Maybe it did better, maybe it did worse, but it is a real good planning tool to see how you're going to go forward. Really important, they capture the information to measure the revenues and expenditures of branch activities and branch fundraisers. And you're going to need that information to fill out the government reports due in the fall. So if you do a really good job of capturing that information according in the method, in the detail that is required in the report, which is at minimum that CTTR, which asks you about financial report information, it's going to be really easy to fill that out. You'll have it right there. You don't have to go back and look at the prior year and figure it out. They also,
Kathy, can I stop you for just a second?
sure.
We have a request that if you could use the slideshow mode so that we can see your whole slide.
Oh,
It'll be
certainly. Sorry.
just up there at the top. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So is that?
On the left, the
Yeah.
play from current slide. Yeah,
Yep,
there.
there we go.
Yeah.
Got it? Is that?
It
Here,
didn't take it yet. There we go.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank
I'm seeing it. So they document the financial history of your brand. So you may have a situation where you haven't had an in-person fundraiser. You're thinking about fundraising and said, hey, we tried this 3 or 4 years ago and it was very successful. Let's do it again. But if you go back to those older financial statements, you can see what it costs, what revenues you put in. You have a history of how that fundraiser operated in that prior year. So it's a real good tool to go back on that. So then going over deferred revenues, and that was a question, and it is confusing. Some of the things that we saw in the questions on the survey really were asking, now that National is recording revenues and starts a clock when you join, first half of the month or second half of the month, but it specifies you're going to get 12-month membership when you pay the dues at any month during the year. So that changed, but since everybody pretty much pays their dues at the same time as they do the national dues, it kind of drags the state and the branch in line with it. So for those of you who don't, a large number don't do deferred revenues. Why are you doing it? What are you trying to capture when you do a branch revenue recognition using deferred revenues? You're trying to match the revenues. You get the cash. Somebody pays something in, say, May, and most of those dues revenues will apply to the next fiscal year. So you're trying to come up with a method that is really simple to apply based on when the bulk of the dues revenue for a particular fiscal year is going to fall. And a consistent application should result in materially correct revenue recognition. If the pattern of your dues revenue receipt comes in consistently about the same time each year, you just have to look at those and say, I want to capture those and put them in the right year. And towards the end of this current fiscal year, what you received late in this year is primarily going to fall into the next year. If you're doing cash basis, you would have really what we call, if the revenue is not changing, the pattern's not changing a lot, and you don't have a huge upsurge in new revenues towards the end of the current fiscal year, you have what an accountant would call compensating cutoff errors. In other words, you didn't recognize the revenue at the end of the last fiscal year as for this current year, and you're going to pull in revenues from the following fiscal year and the current fiscal year, and the differences are negligible. So what you didn't recognize in the current year as dues revenue for the current year is compensated by the dues revenues you're going to pick up from the next fiscal year. So when you look at the total that you're recognizing, it's significantly correct. It's materially correct. So what we looked at now that, how do you recognize dues revenue now that there's no fixed membership revenue? Do you really want to look at every single member and allocate their dues out each month and say, okay, I've got to amortize out their revenue over every month? And basically, we don't want to do that. That's way too complicated and it's confusing, and it won't get you materially more accurate results. So I thought I'd give as a sample is how does AUW California recognize dues? Because it's essentially in the same position as the branches are. Dues, so what we do is dues received for the months up to March, and the cash actually comes in a month later, are treated as current fiscal year's dues. And the receipts for that January through March is a really small percentage. So just including it in the current year doesn't have any big impact on what we're recognizing. So we wouldn't have to say, well, gee, 6 months of this is going to go into the next year. You don't feel it's a big enough chunk to allocate it out. Thereafter, the dues received are recorded as deferred revenues to be recognized in the following fiscal year. And towards the end of the fiscal year, the receipts increase and will fall primarily into the following fiscal year. So we feel that that essentially gives us what we need and is accurate enough to not materially misstate our revenues. If for any reason the pattern of the dues coming in changed dramatically, you'd have to go back and look at your method and come up with a different method. So I'm going to back. Shift up. I am going to have Carol come on board, and she's going to start explaining how you would account for fundraising events. She has a sample here. So Carol?
Yes, thanks, Kathy. This was actually a very good topic for me, just because our branch has a scholarship fund, and the fund held a special event just recently. So this was all very fresh in my mind. But special fundraising events or fundraising events are events that are typically used where the participants pay a fee, but many times the organization is hoping that a portion of that fee will be able to be contributed to the purpose of the event. And maybe there will be other elements, a silent auction or a raffle or something like that, that is going to go on as a part of the fundraising event. Whoops, we went ahead.
Yeah.
Go back.
There we go.
There we go. So when you're thinking about it, you really want to think about the 5 elements that you're considering. First of all, as you're making your budget, it's important to think about how much is it going to cost to put on the event, and then how much are you going to charge people to attend. And the difference between those 2 items might give rise to the possibility of the participant having some portion of their payment as a deduction. If you're a 501c3 branch that's holding this kind of an event. So in my little example, the branch is going to have a dinner, and they're expecting 50 guests to attend. They're going to charge each of those guests $225, which is going to yield them about nearly $12,000 in income. Now they're hiring a caterer, and so the catering and the setup for the meal for the event is going to be $5,000. They want to serve wine, but they've gotten a very nice donation of the wine, but that's still really a part of the expense of operating the event. So the total fundraising expenses are going to be $5,500. Therefore, of the $225 that people are paying, $110 is the fair market value, what those people are receiving. So they're coming to the event, but they're getting a very nice dinner. And if if the organization is a 501c3, they're going to be able to, in their publicity for the event, let people know that of their paying, that they would have a contribution of $115. And I see in the chat, there's a question of if it's a 501c4 organization, then you're not able to offer the participants a deduction for their contribution portion unless you figured out some way that the source is going to be going to a 501c3 organization. So when you report these events on it, I see that several of you do a regular 990. And so the 990 contains a line for fundraising events as well as contributions. The same is true on the California Treasurer's Report, the CTTR1, where you're breaking apart the amount of contributions as well as fundraising expenses. So that's why you really want to look at each of these elements separately when you're doing the calculation for the event. Okay, now we can go to the next slide. So just as a reminder, the government filing requirements, which, as Kathy said at the beginning, it's important to think about this right now because you're generating the numbers that will be used to fill out the various forms that are required in the fall when they're due. So, but just as a reminder, for the federal forms, the 990N, which most of you have a national file on your behalf, and that's great. That is, and then there's the 990EZ for those branches that have an income of 50,000 to 200,000, or the full 990 for those that are above that amount. Those are due on November 15th, but if you want to have national file yours, you need to use the hub to make the request to national by October the 15th. Also, we did a little work last year on the 1099 form, which is required for some things for some branches. We will have more on this in the fall peer group recording, and also you can watch the tape of last fall's recording. Most of these are due on January 31st, so we're not going to worry about that too much today. For California, all of the forms in California are due on, or for all of basically the budget forms are due on November 15th, the 199N or 199, the basic nonprofit report, and then the CTTR1, the registry renewal fee, and then a statement of information. If you're an incorporated branch, that is due every 2 years from the date of your incorporation, and they will send you a reminder. And then last year, the raffle reporting changed so that the raffle year is now a calendar year. So if you had any raffles during, or if you have had or are going to have any raffles during the remainder of 2024, that'll be due on, the report will be due on February 1st of 2025. Okay, next slide. So we did find that with a couple of new filing requirements for those, and I think there were 7 of you that are, I'm sorry, 2 of you that file a 990 EZ because your total income is over $50,000. And if your fundraising gross income is over $15,000, there's a Schedule G, which is now filed with the 990. And that basically just gives you, it breaks down the elements that I was just talking about, the cost of the event, the amount of contributions, the amount of income that was received. The California statement of information is now gone to an online only filing, and it's every 2 years. There is a filing fee with that, and the payment for that can be made online as well. We do recommend that if the information on the statement of information changes, for example, if the primary contact person was the treasurer or the president and that person has changed, you may want to update that information because the contact person is the one that will get the reminder that it's time to file it. And there's no charge for making that kind of filing. Okay, next slide. So one of the things that several people mentioned is the membership renewal on Hub, and people, we're still learning to use the new system, and although it's going probably better than last year, there still have been some problems. And you may have just seen a Membership Matters newsletter went out on Friday that a bug has occurred that where people are having a problem at the checkout point. So they may have put in all of their information and now they're trying to pay and they get an error message. So here is what is recommended at this point is if people say, I got an error message, just stop and send an email to connect@aew.org with the subject line checkout help and with any other information. And the individuals that do this, they can be sent an express payment link so that they can collect their funds. And National will be sending more updates on this. But again, if you get the error message at checkout, just stop and contact connect@aew.org. Okay, that's it for me. And now we go on to Indrani. We'll talk a little bit more about annual reports.
Yes, that is very important. Annual report, as Kathy mentioned, that annual reports are very important. And that's why here is some tips to prepare the financial annual report, reports. And first, before prepare the final report, the few things to remember to check: incoming checks, deposit status, outgoing checks to satisfy branch obligations, and reconcile bank statement with the branch financial record. Once records are all reconciled, then following reports will be prepared for final fiscal year closing. Statement of activity report, actual to budget, statement of financial position, and funds report. These year-end reports are very important because revenue and expenses will reflect the following tax form based on the branch's tax status. Either it go to 990N or 990EZ or 990. Same with the California state. Either it will go to 199N or 199. And also fund reports are very important because it will be included in CTTR one report, which is the annual treasurer report, and also registration renewal report, that RRA form. Next slide. Here is a sample of year-end statement of activity report for 501c3. And you can see that all year-end, everything has been listed and the budget also. Second column is the budget, so that actual will be compared to budget, and it will helpful for next year budgeting. Kathy, next slide. This is a year-end statement of activity report is in a graphical format, and you can see that how revenue and expenses have been budgeted versus how it has been actual. Next slide, Kathy. Year-end fund report. This fund reports is very important because annual treasurer report will reflect this fund report. 501c3 can collect the funds for the branch because their tax status is their donation can be deducted if by the donor if they are donating to the 501c3 branches. But 501c4 is different. If they collect the fund in the branch level, that is not a tax deductible. Kathy, next slide. Next slide will show 501c4. Over here, if any fundraising income has been collected in the tax branch level and deposited to branch bank account, which is not tax deductible for the donors. And I will request to the branch finance officers and the presidents to remind the donors that they are donating, but they cannot deduct from their tax in their tax return this amount. However, if the donation is going directly to SPF fund for Tick Track or any mission-driven fund to AUW fund, that will be tax deductible. But that has to go directly to either AUW fund to national or Tick Track for SPF fund. And next will be the, Kathy, next will be the year-end financial position. This will, and you can see the next is the cash reconciliation. Once you will finish your year-end reporting, then this financial position will give you an idea that how much beginning of the year the checking account has and how much increase or decrease happened at the year end. And this will be very helpful to plan for the next fiscal year, how branch will operate. And that's it. And thank you, Kathy. You can take over.
Okay. All right. I believe we have, it looks like the chat has quite a few questions. Perhaps you have some questions on the financial statements presented, on the fund statement, the internal and external. Internal is what is primarily going through your own branch accounts, and external is going to another organization. But what is really good about making that presentation in total, even though perhaps all the Tech Track donations were made payable to AAUW California SPF and never went through your bank accounts, but the source was your members. And so that shows how much fundraising your members are generating. Same thing for the fund. If they donated on the membership and it simply went into national and passed through to national, that just shows how much fundraising for the fund that your branch provided. And that's really good to know. And sometimes the funds raised and sent to SPF is greater than anything going through the branches. So it really shows how much activity is going with your branch. So what questions do we have, Carol?
So Kathy, there's a couple about deferred revenue. One is what percentage do you think should be recorded as deferred revenue? And then also, is that something that we're reporting for our internal purposes, or does it become part of the reporting to the state or federal?
It would actually be recorded to the state or federal, depending on what level. If you're filing a 990N, they're just looking at total revenues. But if you're filling out a CTTR and you've got these other liabilities that include deferred revenue liabilities, you would record that. And your revenues would be based on what you recognize during the fiscal year. So that does impact it. But as I said, whatever method you pick up, and if you're using deferred revenues because you want to more closely match the revenues, I can tell you for California, when it's filling out that 990, the revenues recognized are the ones that are in the top line in that 990 report, saying the statement of activities would exclude the year-end deferred revenues, but it would have also included the deferred revenues from the prior year that came into the current year. So the idea is to match it and say, well, this method is allowing me to put the cash receipts for dues into the fiscal year that they largely are attributed to. So if you're doing cash, again, you did not pick up revenues that were received at the end of the last fiscal year, but you picked up revenues that would have gone to the next fiscal year. And if they're about the same amount, you're recording the same amount of revenue that you would using a deferred revenue method. You just have to make sure that things have not changed so dramatically that they distort those revenues dramatically. So yes, they would be recognized. Depending if you're using deferred revenues, it's going to be recognized and reported according to how you recognize them. But you would also, you have to report detail on other liabilities on the CTTR. So you would simply say deferred revenues for the next year, and you would note that.
Great, okay. And so one person said they had not done their 990, they did the 990N themselves last year. I don't think there's any problem in requesting National to do it this year. Just again, get that request in before October the 15th. So that
the request is on my membership, right?
yes, it's
And it's been there since we transferred to the new system. So I don't know, how do I make sure that they're going to do it this year? I mean, because I just assumed that they were going to do it because they contacted us and I said it's on my account.
oh, so it was last year you had requested them to file it and it didn't happen. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
In all the years before that we had, but
Yeah.
last year for some reason they said I didn't do it.
I think the all-purpose answer is support@auw.org.
Yeah.
And again, put your topic in the subject line just to give them a heads up. One thing I certainly have corresponded through the years. I was treasurer of my branch, my old branch, for a long time, and I corresponded a lot with Angela Cooper. But support is monitored by several people there at headquarters. So that's just a way to see that more people see it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's valid because even if you go in before October 15th and you go into the function where you're saying for the branch, you know, the 3 dots, and you click on it and say, I want to tax, and you make that request, you should get something that's responding that they've seen it. But if you don't, it's not always clear cut. So sometimes even after I've done that, I've gone in and asked them, are you going to be filing? Did you get the message to file our 990N? So maybe eventually it'll work really smoothly, but the change to Hub has had its challenges.
Best thing is to get it done.
Okay, Laura Guillory, there's a couple of questions. One, I think you had the fundraising event for 501c4 before Indrani finished her part of the presentation. So I think that just the key difference there is that you have to be sure that the funds are actually going directly to something that's eligible for a deduction if you want to offer the participants a deduction for the contribution part of their participation. And then with the secondary branch members, so is this people that are members, primary members of some other branch and they're joint members of your branch?
Yes,
Yeah. And is
they
this
paid their dues. They paid their dues in their primary branch. They sent me a check for
Right.
the dues for our branch.
Right.
But when I go
Uh-huh.
to the roster, it doesn't update it to show that they're current for our branch. It does show them as like as a secondary branch. And I've sent like 3 emails and somehow or other, they don't update the roster to show that.
And this is people who are renewing right now?
Yes, I did it a month and a half ago.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, I would say that, you know, just
keep sending them messages.
try again. And the other thing that certainly has been helpful is the office hours, Tuesdays and Thursdays. You know, they collect people and answer questions in person, and sometimes they answer your question and you know, send you an email directly when you send it in for that. So
Okay, well, I'll try again.
yeah, I know I'm a joint member, and just I happened to look at my own record today and everything's on there. So I haven't actually checked with my dual branch to see if I'm, you know, if they have me listed, but it looks like it from my own personal account.
Right, and I think part of it is that the member must be handing a check to their primary branch and a check to you. And
Correct.
so they're not going on to Hub and filling it all out, because if you go on to Hub, you can list all your secondary branches.
Right, but
You're
most of our
welcome.
members refuse to use the hub, so.
Right, and I understand that, especially right now where it's a little glitchy and randomly glitchy. So it's a challenge from that standpoint. So I do think that if you can find out what's the best way to do it, whether you have to go in and list this person as a dual member on Hub yourself. I know you have to,
I don't think I can do that. I don't think
yeah,
on the hub.
no, it's not structured for.
I would have to log in as them as a user to pay the dues for that
Yeah.
branch, something.
Right.
And I don't know that they even ever created an account. That's why they're giving me the checks.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's a good question to get clarified. And that could be, you know, again, when we do
I'll
a
try the
session,
office hours, see if I have any luck with that.
yeah, and let us know what you find out, because we also, closer to membership renewal, we do a hub specific to really get at that. And I think it's really important because there seems to be new challenges with Hub every year. And if they've changed something or modified something, we want to know about it. What is good is that if you go on the AUW California website and you look at membership renewal, one of the links is right into AUW National in the Hub section. So you can start looking at any changes. But literally, we'd like to have a good understanding of what those changes are for our peer group session on it for next year.
Okay.
And so then Karen Dennis, I'm not quite understanding your question here about the charity trust report. Is it corrected now, or?
No, it's not. And I do apologize when I wrote in the chat. I was complaining, and I know I should have been asking a question. This is what I was doing. We are delinquent with the charity trusts. I did not know this because when I became treasurer, we were not even registered because it fell between the cracks between one treasurer who left, another one who came on who didn't know. That's the sad story. So I inherited it. I got the thing from National that we are, you know, credible. I gave them the articles. I did this and that. And I gave them the $20 for our delinquency kind of thing. So I sent it in 2 years ago. So I thought 2 months ago, well, I'll just check and see if I should register again. I got online and it said, you are delinquent. Now, what do you mean I'm delinquent? I sent this, I sent that, you cashed my check and all of that. Well, what happened on the actual document at the bottom, it had your signature and it has an X in the box. Well, I assumed, of course, with the X in the box, I couldn't sign it, but I was doing it online and it was fine. Well, it's not fine. And so what they said to me is, you should have signed it. Well, I sent back, now it's 3 months for every conversation you have here. And so then I sent it back and I said, it had an X in the box. Well, yes, but some PDF files let you put a signature in there. And you should have checked back after everything was done to see if it was okay. I said, you cashed my check. To me, it would be okay. They said, I said, so what do I do? He said, send in the information with a signature. So I went back, made all my copies, I mailed it 3 months ago, and of course I got another delinquency notice. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Oh, by the way, it takes us 3 to 5 months to answer you. So there I am. Anyway, I've
So
sent them all the documents. I've sent them everything, and I'm waiting. However,
Okay.
it makes me very nervous to see you are delinquent.
Delinquent, yes. Well,
My complaint.
yes, sorry. I do understand that must be very frustrating. But we will all hold good thoughts for you.
Yeah.
One of the things, Kathy, one of the things that we're going to do in just a few minutes is to, again, just show you a little bit on the California website, because we have a very nice section which has the various government forms right there with the, you know, instructions on how to fill them out. So that may be helpful in some of us avoiding that frustration.
Thank you.
We've had a couple of other new additions, renewing lifetime members. I haven't yet seen how this works because I haven't had the opportunity since we had the old system, but basically you would go on the site and check for the state and branch dues as you were renewing people. If you have any new 50-year honorary members, then and if they're new, you probably need to send that in and have it confirmed by National that they are going to switch to honorary status, which of course means that they are going to be exempt from national dues as well as state dues, and probably in many cases branch dues as well.
Yes, and they will send you they will send you a letter and a certificate, but getting
and a
that
nice,
is like pulling teeth.
yes,
We've been
yes,
asking till for April, and I only got it today because I put it in the office hours sign up.
right.
How do I get it? And then I got it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just learned today that we have a new person in our branch who's just gotten to that status, so I'll experience that as well. The raffle activity, again, we'll show you this on the California website. Raffles are fairly highly regulated in California. We consider them gambling here, and so there are some rules about raffles. You do need to apply for raffles before they happen, and then report them. And that has now gone to, as I said, it's all on a calendar year basis. So as you're gearing up for the new branch year, if you have plans to do any raffles, that you may want to think about that. Kathy, could we go ahead and bring up the website at this point?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So one of the things on this committee that we did quite a bit of work on last year was reorganizing the financial tools section of the AUW California website. And I have to say, having moved here from another state, I was quite envious of all that is available. And now it's even a little bit more organized than it was originally. So Kathy's going to share her screen.
Can we go back to my honorary life members? Do we have to do anything for them on an annual basis?
I think you just should confirm that they're still there. Maybe their address or contact information has changed. So you're going into branch tools and then financial tools. And then it's divided up into these various sections. And you can see, you can look at many of these for lots of other resources. But this one section here, government documents and deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
And if you scroll down a little bit more, there's the raffle reporting. Mm-hmm. And then on that click, if she clicks on click here, it will have examples of all of those government forms, and many of them there's a link directly to the form so that you can download a PDF and fill it out. There's the list. And there's the raffle application, the raffle report form. So those are all and in many cases, it actually includes, if the state provides a little video on how to fill it out, there's a link to that as well. So that, again, that's branch tools, finance, and then the various sections is how you'll find that. Thank you. Any other questions?
I had put one in the chat. I don't know. It says on the charity registration that we're current, but
Mhm.
part of the problem is that the EIN number on there is not ours. I don't know whose it is. But if you go and look at the documents that are on there, they're my documents with the right EIN number. I've been trying to get it to be changed because our state representative wanted to give us some money, but they went on here and said, that's not, you know, the
Oh,
EIN
wow.
number you gave us is not it, whatever. I've written to the state, haven't heard from them. I don't know if they've gotten my 199s now, so I'm like really confused. I don't know what to do. So
Wow. Have you tried to do a cross-reference to see whose EIN number that is?
it says it's us, but when I actually had to call the federal for something, and they said they don't know where that number came from. It does show that it's us, but not that it's ever been used by anybody. So I don't know if I just don't know. The federal government knows it's not us, but the state just keeps on saying that it's us, but it's not.
Did the branch merge with?
No. At one point that they were considering being a 501c3, but that never happened. And then National said you couldn't become one anymore. So any thoughts of doing that? But I don't think we ever got to the point where we submitted anything to get an EIN number. And the EIN number, I don't know. I just don't know what the number is, and I don't know how to fix it. And before I can retire in whatever year that is, I would like to get this fixed for the next person so that it's not an issue.
Do you have a document showing the actual number that is?
The founding document that's under this other EIN number is our founding document with the correct EIN number on it. All the documents that are on there have our EIN number. It's just that whatever this number is on top, it's just not us.
So the state is not using your real EIN number. It's using this other EIN number, and the feds have a record of that number that California is using, but they said that's dormant, and they've got two numbers associated with you, but they're using the one that's in your founding document and has been used at all times.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, all I can think of is attempting to get hold of the state.
I wrote him a letter because I figured that was more likely than calling, because I called and been put on hold. So, all right.
Yep,
Well, I'll just keep on trying. I can't do the 199 online because it says it's not a valid.
Yeah.
Whatever. So
Right.
I've been mailing them, but I don't know that they've been getting them because I don't know anything. So.
All right, let's go.
Do you do a full 199 or you're?
No, 199N, but it's
Which has to be on. It might be worth, you have to have a time period where you have the time to be on hold.
yeah.
I have experienced that with different things, and it's tough. Maybe first thing in the morning, try calling them and get to the right person to clear that up and see specifically what they need, because
I was hoping you guys had some magic, so.
yeah, I wish I had that magic stick.
All right, I'll do
That'd be-
that. I'll pick a day of the week, which
Yeah.
I think Wednesday is supposedly the least likely day people are gonna call, so I'll spend a Wednesday someday and figure it out. So, all right, thank you.
We'll send you our good wishes for sure.
Yeah,
I will need every one of you on this call to have
Yeah.
good wishes for me on this, so.
that's the
I'm-
problem.
I screen printed all your names, and so I'm gonna, if it doesn't work, I'm gonna be coming after each one of these. So.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough.
One of the
Okay.
problems is that the franchise tax board is more aggressive than the IRS. So they're going after a lot of, you think, small dollars, and you wonder why they get into that detail, but maybe if they have.
May I suggest calling your local state elected official,
Yeah,
talking to them, telling them your problem, and see if they can help you.
Okay,
That's
well,
what they're supposed to do.
since
Yeah.
you gave us some money, I'll see if she'll
Yeah,
help us.
I was-
through this one. So, yeah.
I was gonna say, since at this point, they're directly involved.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a few more questions that have come in. One, how do we find out about donations our members made to National? And basically a report comes each month that gives you people that made, because people right now, I've received notice, I've been the funds chairman for my branch, and so quite a few people have made contributions in the context of redoing their membership renewal. And those seem to have come out about maybe the 15th of the month, giving the, the update status for that have come in. Kathy, I don't know, is there a way to know how branches can hear from people giving contributions directly to the state?
I think it's going to end up being on the national report that they should be providing, indicating how much. And they also should do an annual report, which you should receive, showing how many donations came from and because I know the state, I'll look at the most recent one. If you send that directly to cfo@aeuw-ca.org, I can get at that and see when those reports will be available. Or if I get the report that shows every branch, then, if you give me your branch, then I can tell you what that report shows for your branch.
Sort it out, yes. Here's a good question about restricted contributions. If somebody branch raised donations for one purpose, and that purpose no longer needs funds, can we move it to general funds, or actually to some other purpose? So I'll let you accountant types think about that. If the purpose basically it is no longer valid, maybe we raised it for a certain project and we're not doing that project anymore.
Yeah, that's a good question. If it's restricted, if the donor made the donation for a purpose that you can no longer use it for, you actually should contact the donor and get their permission to shift it to something else. You may be something like they want to support women and girls programs, and so if you said we're not doing this scholarship program anymore, but it could go to Tech Trek or Nick Whistle or something else that you are participating in, you just get their authorization and you can make the shift.
Yes, and authorization should come in a letter, not in the verbal. So
Right.
that it will be stay with the branch.
Right, and then you really have that letter authorizing
Yes.
and saying these restricted funds are being shifted on that permission from the donor. And
Yeah,
then
restricted fund, yeah.
These were non-deductible funds. So it's
even,
all in the branch funds.
yeah, I think I think though, if a donor has committed money, and let's say you're a 501c4 and you're raising funds for scholarship, but the donations for the scholarships are not tax deductible, you still want to get, and let's say you discontinue that program and are going to shift it even to something that would be tax deductible. Unfortunately, you're probably out of the period for them to take the deduction, but I think you still would need permission from the donor because they're operating in good faith to give you
I
that.
have a
Fundraiser.
question.
Does it matter if it was a fundraiser and we had, 50 attendees and did it that way? Does it
Well, I
matter?
think if you're going to do that and you want to have flexibility, the best thing to do is say we're raising the funds and they will be used for these 5 programs as needed. And so when the person makes that donation, they know it's going to be for a program supporting women and girls, and you can describe them. At that point, you've got their permission to hit any one of them. I think we also have a question, I don't know if it's in the chat, from Maria Roman. Has her hand raised.
Hi, yeah, this is Susanna.
Oh,
So the
Am I on?
question that I have, it relates to all of this, which is, we have Speech Trek and the people give $25 every year for 5 or 10 years. And I hear Speech Trek is now going to be discontinued. And so we have money in that fund. And there's just no way we're going to go back year by year and find which people donated their $25 or $50 and ask them whether or not. I mean, I just don't see doing that in terms of returning the funds. So I just wanted to check and see whether just say we'll put it into scholarship or Tech Trek or.
You know, what you could do is just send a letter out to everyone that has been donating, or you could think of it that's kind of a FIFO. So it's only the most recent donors that are impacted that's still in your accounts. But either way, if they regularly send, if you have so many donors, you can just send them a letter notifying them that you're going, since the Speech Track program is no longer available and we still have funds, that the branch makes a decision by its board to spend those on, a couple other projects, and then notify them and just let them know that if they have a problem with this, they are to contact you. So they've been notified, and if they don't respond to you, then you've got documentation that you've notified the donors of these small amounts and what you're going to do with it that is consistent with your branch missions that they have been donating to all along.
Okay, thank you.
Are you saying Speech Trek on a state level is being discontinued or in your branch?
On the state level, we just found out.
When did you find out?
Last week at our board meeting, but essentially what we were told is like only 16 branches actually participate, and therefore I don't know, it's just not worth continuing. It's not as a statewide item, and so you can do it yourself or whatever, but it's not going to be a state, and there may be one more year. We're waiting to hear about that.
Do you know who got that notification? Because we have not heard anything in our branch, so I just want to see if somebody's not reading their emails.
I don't know. I'd have to ask around.
Well, that's okay. I'm just gonna send an email right now and find out if anybody has heard. Thanks.
I'm sure there will be an announcement based on, part of the issue is that you have to have someone running the program at the state level and managing it all. And if they have difficulty filling that position, it's difficult to keep running the program.
Okay, we have a couple of other questions. If members donate $20 to the branch, or maybe that's $20,000 and $10,000 to AUW funds. Basically, if it's AUW funds is just a pass through, so that does not count as your branch's donations. And I think Indrani covered that on her slides on the reporting as well.
And that is just to point out this difference. Sorry to interrupt, Carol.
Sure.
That is one of the few things. If you're a 501c4, and of course your members are maybe giving you checks for their membership renewal, and they've added on the funds, and so you have to deposit that whole check and then remit it on to national. That is the one thing that can go through your bank account and be passed through, and it remains tax deductible to the donor because the branch is simply facilitating the pass through to national. So, but it does not count as your revenue, even though it's passed through it, any more than the national dues that you're passing and the state dues that you're passing on to national count as branch dues. You don't include them in your gross revenues. You're just an agent for getting the dues into national and state.
Another question about the office hours. The way you figure out how to sign up for that is that you go onto the national website, and let me see, I'll just see if I can put this in the chat myself here. So membership, scroll down, and then where it says Community Hub, there's a button that says Learn More. There's a couple of videos there and some other information. And then at the very bottom, it says Still Have Questions. And there are 2 sessions each week, or at least they start with the idea that there are 2 sessions each week. And sometimes they're canceled if they don't have enough people that have signed up. But on Tuesdays, they're at, for us, they're at noon, and Thursdays they're at 12:30. So that's where you find it, is on the membership section of the national website.
This is another way you can get to the link.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
California, and it will put you in here, and you can get to the various topics and still have questions at the very end. This is where you register. And when you register, they give you a space to ask a question. And that's the cases where you might get contacted by somebody at National to answer your question.
Yeah, that actually happened to me at the first time I was going to go on. That day it happened to be canceled, but they answered my question anyway. So and also 501c4s, yes, can hold raffles. And then we've got a couple more hands raised. Maria, I know you had asked when will the recording of this be available? And maybe you have another question besides that.
No, that was it.
Okay. Kathy, do you have an idea of when how long does it take to post the recordings?
Well, I have recorded it on the cloud, so that makes it quicker. And I will notify Web Team that we have recorded this, so it's available. And hopefully they can get it up in a couple days. It may be next week, though.
Thank you.
And Lana, you have your hand up?
Hi. We have in our branch someone who actually physically goes in and when a member gives us a check for all the dues, goes in and into the hub and pays for the state and national. And she used to get a receipt back, but often she gets this bulk payment. It's an Excel spreadsheet that's not doesn't have the elements of a receipt on it. So I'm wondering, is there a whole report that I can download that's all of our receipts for all of our payments that I can use to reconcile our monthly statements, bank statements? Have we overlooked that?
You get, you should be getting a statement of dues received for being deposited into your branch for members who have paid directly, and they will give you that, but that I don't think addresses everything you're asking about.
Yeah, I get that for members that go
Right.
online and
Yeah.
pay online, that's wonderful. But for those that we have to physically pay for in the hub, because our members, we have a number of members that will not use the hub.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
we have to do it for them. And the kinds of receipts we get are
Yeah.
they vary, and it would certainly be nice to get a summary for the month.
Yeah, if they could get a
Certainly that's
summary.
got to
of those-
exist somewhere.
Yeah. One thing you could do is register and ask that specific question and say, is there a way of using the hub where I can print something either before or after you give that receipt, or will you generate a report, a monthly report, along with the dues that were paid online directly by the members? So that is something too that we can research when we do the webinar going forward, because right now you're getting a lot of payments. I'm sure you're in the middle of your dues renewal, because most of our members are still on the old cycle. They always paid in May, June, July for the upcoming year. And so I would assume that most of your dues for this next fiscal year are coming in now, or that will apply mainly to the next fiscal year. So you can try that to see if you can get a quick answer from them. The soonest one would have to be this coming Tuesday. And they do it on Tuesday and Thursday. And that might help you get some reconciliation, at least for the year end, so you have everybody in who's been renewing right now.
Well, and for me, it's the bank statements for the monthly, either deposits or withdrawals that they make
Exactly
from our accounts.
Yeah, you can see where you've paid it. You see that because they pull it out of your account. If they are pulling it directly out of your account, or it's been charged to a credit card or a debit card, you'll see that. Sometimes it's a question, and they changed the system again, because when I was using it before and it was still Hub, I would see the names of the people I was putting in and checking them off, and I was able to print something at some point to actually get the names. And now that doesn't seem to be happening as cleanly. So
actually, and there's Joanne Cobb has put a comment here, and I actually remember this came up last year when we did the renewals, that create a renewals and donations worksheet, print that out and save it so that you have a backup copy, and somebody else has the same experience. So yes, thanks. Joanne's saying yes, that's
good point.
been helpful.
It's a very nice receipt to keep.
Yeah.
And it gives, your roster, and you can see what you've paid. So I think that may satisfy the woman's question.
Yeah, it might. So Lana, you'd be able to, if that works for you, but there is a point where you can print that report or run a report.
So Joanne, do you just keep a separate spreadsheet when something's paid?
Well, what I'm, as renewals come in, I have a spreadsheet to process them as they come in day by day. So I have my own spreadsheet, but when I go into the hub and for instance, I renewed 24 members last week. And so you go through and you click all those. And then at the bottom, there's a button that you can click to create that renewals and donations. It's a worksheet to double check that you got everyone, because it's a little kludgy. And so I always save that. So you bring up the spreadsheet. So then I save it in my folder. When I went, this is my second year as finance officer. My first year I was printing off so much. Now I don't print off as much, but I save them. And then I figure out when I have to print stuff off, for example, for these end of year reports, etc. But I think that will give you, have you ever done that, created that spreadsheet when you've done the renewals?
In our branch, we have a separate person that does that. It's just how our branch got set up at some point. And our current person isn't keeping a spreadsheet. She's sending me these onesie twosies receipts. I mean, they used to be a genuine receipt, which was great, had all the information that a receipt's supposed to have. And then more recently, all she gets is this bulk order.
Well, the bulk order that comes as an email is pretty primitive.
Yeah.
And so that's why this worksheet is really good. And you still, when a new member joins, we've had some new members, you do get a nice report. You get both the opportunity in the hub to print a nice report. They send a nice report via email. It's for renewals that you don't get such a nice report. But perhaps that person who does this for you, she doesn't realize that she could create that spreadsheet, because it sounds like that's what you could use.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
thank you very much for your help.
Sharon, you might be seconding this idea. I see you have a comment and a hand raised. Sharon, you're muted here.
Carolyn.
Okay, thank you. I'm the finance officer for our branch, and I'm working with a new membership person. And since National switched over, what I did was to make a special membership Excel spreadsheet. And I listed all of our members, and then I also indicated those who are honorary members, and I put the dates when people are coming due in months other than June. And so what I did when it was ready to switch over to a new year is I made one for the fiscal year 24-25, and I indicated those folks who had paid in prior years. And as my new people came on, then I'm indicating their membership, and I'm keeping track of that as I go along. And I found that the reports that National provides has been very helpful to me, because it's a way to cross-check what I've seen, and also checking the roster. The roster that you get on the hub, I think, is an excellent resource, because that really shows current membership data. And it's another way to see when people are actually coming due on their membership. But I found those, it took a while to get it set up, but now that I've been the membership or the treasurer for a couple of years, and we get a new membership person, I'll be able to share that information with the new membership person. And since I do the fiscal part, I'm able to let her know what comes from National showing that people have paid. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or can visualize what it is I'm doing, but I find it very, very helpful.
Great, that sounds like a good system. Carolyn?
And the roster is useful. You can always see when that roster gets updated, if they've moved it to the next fiscal year. That's a pretty good support that they did receive your funds.
So Carolyn, you're up. You're also on mute.
Mute.
You're muted. There we go.
For all the time that the hub has been in existence until just recently, it was very annoying to us because when people joined individually online, all we got was a notice on our bank statement that the $26 for our branch dues had been put into our account. There was no name attached to it. So just recently, I have noticed that somebody out of Washington is sending us a lot of good information about the new people who join or any renewing person who joins online. It gives us the name, it gives us everything except the phone number. Now, one of the problems when there was no personal information, just the amount of dues, was that the state of California AEUW officers and board members are listed on our branch roster. And not knowing who all of them were, once or twice I assumed that one of them was a new member of our branch. Because I knew that the money had been deposited in our checking account and no way to know. So I want to commend you that finally that has been sorted out. And now we get all the information except the phone number when there is a new member who joins our branch. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Well, that's good to know. And okay, Joanne, you're back.
Yes, I just wanted to follow on what I believe Sharon was saying about that roster you can create. What I've been doing so that we have co-membership people and our president is I save that spreadsheet and then I hide a lot of the columns. And what I did is I highlighted the members who haven't renewed yet, who are expiring in June. And then everybody sees the same information about these new renewal dates. And I think it's really nice to send that report if someone knows how to use Excel and highlight rows, because everyone's getting the same information. So I think it's a great tool to use.
Yeah, sounds like it's very, very worthwhile. And also you could, use filters to pick out all the people that are, due to renew this month or something like that. So one little question here about raffles. Raffles, there's really no deduction, so you don't worry about 501c3 or C4 unless for the 501c3 branch, the donor of the raffled item might want a tax deduction for the item that's being raffled. But if you buy a ticket for a raffle, you're paying for the right to win something. You're not making a contribution. So, all right, I think it's 8 o'clock, so I think we're getting close to the end of our time here, and we will try and do a summary.
Right, we will do a summary of the questions and get an answer, and that will be posted along with the PowerPoint on the website for Peer Session 4 on annual reports. Thank you all for joining. I'm really glad that you were able to offer your own solutions and how you handle things. I think that's one of the best part of the peer group, what everybody can teach each other. So
some learning. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for all the information.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you and good night. Are we done? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Peggy. All right. I think that went well. A lot of questions got answered.
Yes, for sure.
See if I can.
So, oh, I'm gonna save the chat here.
Yes.
Only one person is still there. huh?